For thousands of years, it has been common knowledge among all people that marriage is defined as wedlock between a man and a woman. But where did this definition come from? Is it accurate? Are same-sex marriages to be considered legitimate? What about the so-called modern family, that is, women or men who choose to raise children without a father or a mother? What makes ideas about family today so different from the natural arrangement dating back to the beginning of the human race? These questions will be answered during this episode of The World to Come. Stay tuned. For nearly 5 decades, the long-established family structure of marriage between a man and a woman has been under attack. Assaults have escalated greatly in recent years. In fact, deviant forces have forcefully pushed an agenda seeking to discredit the legitimacy of the ordained relationship between a man and a woman. Why, even many heterosexuals today consider marriage more of a tradition that is not required when it comes to sexual activity. What many do not realize is that the attacks on marriage are an attack on the family structure itself, and a lot of damage has already been done. In a country such as America, for example, that once considered fornication and adultery disgraceful, and homosexuality something that was a sin against nature itself, the majority of citizens in this country and in free countries around the world have been deceived into believing that sexual deviancy is morally equal to the honorable relationship between a husband and a wife. And those who refuse to accept the newfangled values have been subject to harassment, ridicule, and even threatened with losing their jobs. In addition to the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender movement, a decline in teaching the standards of our forefathers has caused promiscuity to become so appealing that many shun marriage because they feel that it will restrict the variety of pleasures that they would like to enjoy. Millions of men and women today have more than one sexual partner, without fear of consequence and with no real desire for commitment. Yes, the conscience of many has been swayed by these attacks on the time-honored institution of marriage and family. And even among those who choose a single partner, millions cohabit without taking vows. One survey estimated that the number of cohabiting unmarried couples has doubled since the year 1990, and the once respected titles of husband and wife has been replaced with the loose expression significant other. What many refuse to recognize is that despite the forced acceptance of unisex bathrooms and homosexual propaganda and lesbian, bisexual, and transgender parades, the new morality claiming that fornication, adultery, and homosexuality should be considered normal and natural truly cannot justify same-sex marriage or sex without marriage as equivalent to the relationship between a husband and wife. And the reason is because marriage was defined thousands of years ago by God. Family is His institution, and the Bible boldly declares without apology that it requires a man and a woman to come together with a desire to be one, that is, a single family unit. Why, notice what God stated shortly after the first man and woman were introduced. He said that a man shall be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. This quote dates back to the beginning of human history, It explains that only a man and a woman can be joined in matrimony. A man and a woman were designed, in fact, for this purpose, and anything different is not considered marriage. People can try to call it wedlock when two men or two women exchange vows, but such efforts are a misuse of predefined terms. Just as we cannot take an apple and redefine it as an orange, God declares that marriage can only be valid when it's between a man and a woman. Now, people have understood this truth for thousands of years. In fact, humanity was destined to flourish in this way. Notice what God had said after creating Adam and Eve. He said that male and female He created them, and God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it." And so the first man and woman were created to come together and to form a family with children. And they were told to multiply, to fill the earth. And this can only be accomplished between a male and a female who have committed themselves to rearing children who share the same values, who understand that family is the foundation of the human race, and it begins with a man and a woman. Now, since that time, the earth has been filled with billions of people. But it did not occur by redefining marital terms. In fact, the Bible declares that the unnatural use of a man or a woman sexually is an abomination. And only a male paired with a female can procreate. And this is a standard set in the flesh from the very beginning. Notice what political analyst Dr. Ryan Anderson wrote. Marriage exists to bring a man and a woman together as husband and wife, to be father and mother to any children their union produces. It is based on the anthropological truth that men and women are different and complementary, the biological fact that reproduction depends on the man and a woman, and the social reality that children need both a mother and a father. Why marriage predates government. It is the fundamental building block of all human civilization. Obviously, modern civilization was not built on same-sex marriages. Families were not formed by men or women having illicit sex. And despite the irrational rhetoric found in the recent assaults on marriage, many have been fooled, but they are only fooling themselves. Even the so-called common law for cohabitation is not really a law. Though it has become common today, that is cohabitation, God does not recognize cohabitation as a legitimate alternative to marriage, and even the courts in America cannot decide how to apply such an absurd motion. Why, one legal consulting website states the following: there is a common misperception that if you live together for a certain length of time, 7 years is what many believe, that you are common law married. This is not true anywhere in the United States. Only a few states recognize common law marriages, and each has specific stipulations as to what relationships are included. As we can see, these attacks on the family structure create all sorts of confusion. And God is not the author of confusion. His ideals are sure and foundational. They make good sense. And the modern definitions of marriage are ideas and commandments of men that are being taught as doctrine today, but they are false doctrine. But still, they have proliferated to the point where many consider marriage an institution that is outdated. In a culture that feeds on lust of the flesh and lust of the eyes and pride, some attribute disregard for marriage to our desire for immediate gratification in our throwaway culture, like finding the contents of a can, bottle, or box gratifying and then throwing away the containers. It seems that many want the sexual pleasure that was placed within the confines of marriage, but they don't want the container that the pleasure comes in. Why, God has placed extraordinary gratification within a confined relationship of marriage. But our throwaway culture no longer wants the box because it appears to be restrictive. And people are being told to live outside the box, but to enjoy its contents nonetheless. This deviance is propagated by an entertainment industry that glorifies illicit sex. Why, one study found that more than 33% of men and women say that they have watched a TV show or a movie that affected them so much they considered divorce. Why, the entertainment today is filled with ideals that are contrary to the Bible. And despite the recent attempts to redefine marriage and family, the roles of a husband and wife were determined long ago. Why, the guidelines have already been determined, and any attempt to change the rules is truly futile. And though some may be fooled, such attempts stand no ground with God, and they shouldn't with you. Runaway ideals do not level the playing field. Why, the game remains the same, and even though some might try to change the rules. But again, these attacks on marriage have fooled many. And one result has been role confusion. Why, some men think that they need to act more like women, and some women desire to be more like men. And many women now despise the idea of a man being head of the household. On the other hand, some men have abdicated their role. Do you even know what the roles of a man and a woman are in a marital relationship, and therefore the expectations that each of us have? Have we lost sight of our purpose? Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get back on track. And to help you, Quest for Truth has produced a number of free books and booklets explaining biblical topics. Today's featured booklet is titled Read the Book. Some people consider the Bible to be outdated or perhaps intimidating in its size or subject matter. Some think that it has no value or no connection to our modern world, or perhaps you think it's too difficult to understand. Our free booklet will help you to know the Bible by relating helpful study guidelines. It will explain how important the Bible is to our existence today and in the future. Our booklet is offered free of charge with no cost and no unsolicited follow-up. You can visit our website to request this material, or stay tuned, and at the end of this program, we will show you how to receive a free copy of Read the Book. While defining marriage, let's consider for a moment the first couple of human history. Adam was designed with arms, legs, hands, feet, a nose, a mouth, and unique reproductive organs. And so we see that God never intended for Adam to be alone and to procreate on his own. Why, notice what God said. He said, "It's not good that man should be alone. I will make him a helper comparable to him." And the eternal God caused a deep sleep to fall on Adam, and Adam slept. And God took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh in its place. Then the rib which the eternal God had taken from man he made into a woman, and he brought her to the man. And Adam said, "This is now bone of my bones, and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of a man. And therefore a man shall leave his father and mother, and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." We see that God intended for Adam to spend some time alone so that he would feel how empty life would be without a woman. Without a female companion, Adam would be incomplete and unfulfilled. As James Brown wrote in one of his most famous compositions, "This is a man's world, but it wouldn't be nothing without a woman." And so notice that God made Eve from Adam. Now, he could have done this differently. God did not need Adam's rib to create a woman, but he chose to make the man first and then to literally take a part of him and create a woman with using Adam's living tissue as a foundation for her existence. Why did he do it this way? Well, the reason was so there would be no question about their respective roles. You see, a man and a woman were designed to be together. And upon marriage, the woman becomes flesh of his flesh, and she takes on his last name. It's a spiritual concept that comes from a physical act, and therefore it applies both spiritually and physically to this day. Why, Eve was as much a part of the man as he was a part of her. And God did not use this method to merely express one way out of many ways that two individuals can become one. He showed us that it must be a man and a woman, male and female. He created them for this purpose, the purpose of creating a family. Upon consummation, the two are bound and are no longer heading in different directions. They remain individuals, of course, with distinct likes and dislikes, hobbies, hairstyles, and clothing, but they are unified in their mind, working for the good of the family together. And perhaps this is the root of our problems today. It has become less and less common for people to want to work together for the greater good. Why, people generally want to implement what they feel is best without regard for morality, integrity, or the facts of history. With this in mind, Let's consider some of the facts as opposed to the opinions of marriage. Why, the Bible declares that the husband is to be the head of the family. As the Apostle Paul wrote, "Wives, submit to your own husbands, as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as also Christ is the head of the church, and he is the Savior of the body. Therefore, just as the church is subject to Christ, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything." The Bible unequivocally states that the husband is the head of the family. It is not written that the husband should be the head or that his function is optional, but that the husband is in a position of authority by the innate relationship designed by God. Now, I can almost hear the feathers ruffling through the television screen of some of the women. Why is that? Why is it that many women today cringe at the idea of a man being in a position of authority over them? Well, the reason is because many women are of the opinion that this fact means that they can be mistreated. But this is not true. And though some men have misused their authority and mistreated some women, maltreatment was not to be factored into this equation. Why, being a head of household is not an excuse for unreasonable and unethical demands. Physical or emotional abuse should not be tolerated. Simply because the man is the head of the household doesn't mean that women can be treated like doormats that only exist to please the man. Why, the Bible never even hints this to be the case. And so the opinion that marriage, according to the Bible, is demeaning and abusive is not based on fact. And this becomes clear when we continue. As Paul wrote, "Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for her. So husbands ought to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as the Lord does the church." A man does not hate or mistreat his own body. They cherish and nurture themselves, and this is the same way a man is to treat his wife. And this leads us to understand why God took a piece of Adam and made a woman. She was a part of his flesh, and she should be cherished and nourished as such. So God set the example in the beginning so that all men would know that they are to nourish and cherish their wives. And God inspired the Apostle Paul to use the example of this relationship, comparing it to Christ and his church. He gave the example so that men would accept the fact that women are to be treated with respect and not abused. They are to be treated with kindness, putting her needs even above his own, providing for her, protecting her, and planning for the future together. These are the facts of marriage according to the Bible. And there is a parallel to the covenant between Christ and the church. You see, Christians are to become an extension of Christ, just as Eve became an extension of Adam. However, both the husband and wife have equal responsibility toward making the relationship complete and fulfilling. They work together for the benefit of the entire family and each other. And the Bible makes this definition of marital roles clear when Paul wrote, "Nevertheless, let each one of you in particular so love his own wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband." This verse speaks of two needs that must be fulfilled in order for the marriage to be mutually beneficial. The husband needs to be respected and shown this respect by the woman, and the woman needs to be loved and shown this love by the man. And these are often two of the hardest things for men and women to do. Men frequently forget to show their love and gratitude, while women tend to have difficulty in respecting their husband. These are weaknesses that each of us have as human beings, which is likely why God declared that we need to work on it. However, when men and women apply these duties, we find that it's much easier for a woman to show respect to her husband when her husband is expressing love for her. And it's also much easier for a man to express love for his wife when he is shown respect. But the responsibilities of family are not limited to the husband and wife. Children have their part to play as well. Why, listen to what the Apostle Paul wrote about the family. "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with you and you may live long on the earth. Paul paraphrases the fifth commandment, where all offspring are told to give honor to their parents. This command was given with the understanding, of course, that children must have parents who are honorable. As the Scriptures declare, parents are to train up a child in the way that they should go. And therefore, the responsibility of children behaving respectfully does not fall on them alone. They need guidance that is both firm, but given with loving kindness. As the Apostle Paul continued to explain, "And you fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and admonition of the Lord." Child rearing must include principles that are free from unjust and unreasonable demands. Children need patience and guidance from their parents, but they also need a stable environment in which to grow. And the ideal environment includes both a mother and a father. And studies have shown that children who have both a mother and a father actively engaging them throughout their lives have a far greater chance of optimal development than those who have no father or no mother. For example, dads play particularly important roles in the foundation of both sons and daughters. Notice what Rutgers University sociologist David Papono explains. The burden of social science evidence supports the idea that gender-differentiated parenting is important for human development, and that the contribution of fathers to child rearing is unique and irreplaceable. The significance of gender-differentiated parenting undoubtedly is related to something fundamental in the human condition. The two sexes are different to the core, and each is necessary culturally and biologically for the optimal development of a human being. We should disavow the notion that mommies can make good daddies, just as we should disavow the popular notion of radical feminists that daddies can make good mommies. Millions of babies are born out of wedlock every year. Many of them end up being raised without a father figure in their lives because men either refuse to make their wrong right or women refuse to allow men to fulfill their responsibility as a father. There are children being raised by homosexual men or lesbian couples and forced to develop life skills with no mother or no father. And despite what people have been conditioned to believe, children pay dearly for this lack of family structure. By a study published by the left-leaning research institution Child Trends concluded that it's not simply the presence of two parents, but the presence of two biological parents that seems to support children's development. Research clearly demonstrates that family structure matters for children, and the family structure that helps children the most is a family headed by two biological parents in a low-conflict marriage. Children in single-parent families, children born to unmarried mothers, and children in step-families or cohabiting relationships face higher risks of poor outcomes. There is thus value for children in promoting strong, stable marriages between biological parents. Is it any wonder that studies give credit to the God-given structure of family? Why, the human race itself is a witness to this truth. You see, God designed the first man and the first woman, and He created them to become a family and to fill the earth with their offspring. And the simple fact that men and women have different but complementary traits, skills, and reproductive organs should leave no question. A true marriage can only exist between a man and a woman. Still, the assaults on family are forcing society as a whole to believe otherwise. Many claim that the structure of a family should be redefined and that a family can be a mother who does not want a father to help raise the child, or there can be two fathers and no mother, or two mothers and no father. Even worse, the agenda is attempting to force people to accept what is an abominable lie: that genders can switch roles and a woman can become a man and be a father, or a man can become a woman and be an adequate mother. And you know what they say? It's all good. Ladies and gentlemen, it is not all good. Many things being pushed by the agenda today are bad, and they are getting worse. People are propagating the assumption that family is whatever you want it to be, that marital relationships can be anything the twisted mind of men and women might fancy. And it has moved beyond the LGBT movement. It has moved beyond promiscuity. Around the world, there are cases of people making marital vows to a dog, a cat, a goat, a dolphin, and in one case, a woman claims to have married a snake. There are people who have claimed to marry places such as the Eiffel Tower, and at least 2 people have married themselves. Some of this sickening behavior may have been for the sake of infamy, but my point should be well taken. Family is under attack, and the values of true family are not winning this fight. Why, more than 50.5 million American children in the public education systems of today are being taught that they can define marriage any way they want, and that it's all good. Ladies and gentlemen, it is not all good. The world is rapidly changing, and not for the better. Why, the projected image of a 21st century modern family is not what God designed it to be. People are being told that they must accept it and conform to the new normal. But the Bible says otherwise. As the Apostle Paul declared, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God." Ladies and gentlemen, you need to know what is the good and perfect, acceptable will of God. There is vitally important truths regarding family, purpose, destiny that you need to know, and you can know. Why, the facts of our existence, our history, and our future are outlined in the good book called the Bible. You need to read this book and to prove what is good and acceptable behavior. And to help you, Quest for Truth is offering a free booklet with no solicitation and no undesired follow-up. The Eternal Church of God produces a variety of free literature to help readers understand many truths about concerning topics of the Bible. Today we are featuring the booklet titled Read the Book. Some people consider the Bible to be outdated or perhaps intimidating in its size or subject matter. Maybe you think it has no value or no connection to our modern world, or perhaps you think it's too difficult to understand. Our free booklet will help you to know the Bible by relating helpful study guidelines. It will explain how important the Bible is to our existence today and for the future. Our booklet is offered free of charge with no cost and no follow-up. You can either visit our website to request this material, or stay tuned, and in just a few moments we will show you how to receive a free copy of Read the Book.
No one knows the day or hour when the end shall come to pass. Not the angels that dwell in heaven, only the Father from above. No one knows the day or hour when the end shall come.